25 things black mothers did in the 1980s that were beneficial to their homes that would shock today's generation. The 1980s were tough economic times for many black families, but black mothers had an arsenal of creative strategies to make every dollar count. These weren't just budget tricks. They were survival skills passed down through generations, perfected in kitchens, at thrift stores, and in neighborhood networks. Today's generation might look at these methods and see hardship, but back then, they represented resilience, ingenuity, and a refusal to let financial struggles break the family. Here are 25 ways black mothers in the 1980s stretched their dollars so far they practically made money multiply, diluting shampoo and dish soap with water to make them last twice as long. When a bottle of shampoo or dish soap got halfway empty, black mothers would add water to stretch it out for another few weeks. They'd shake the bottle vigorously until the mixture looked like the original product, and nobody could tell the difference. Kids would use the watered-down shampoo without even knowing it had been stretched. This wasn't about being cheap. It was about making sure the household budget could cover other essentials like food and rent. A bottle of Prel or Joy Dish soap cost money that could go toward milk or bread instead. Some mothers got so good at this that they could make a single bottle last for months. They knew exactly how much water to add without making the soap completely ineffective. For black mothers in the 1980s, this trick was second nature, a small act of financial magic that kept the household running smoothly, reusing aluminum foil and plastic bags until they literally fell apart. Nothing went to waste in black households during the 1980s. Aluminum foil that covered last night's dinner would be carefully washed, smoothed out, and folded for the next use. Plastic grocery bags became trash can liners, lunch bags, and storage containers. Ziploc bags were washed and hung to dry on the dish rack, ready to be used again and again. Kids learned not to throw anything away without checking with their mother first, because she could probably find another use for it. This habit came from generations of making do with less, and it taught children the value of resourcefulness. A single roll of aluminum foil could last for months when every piece was reused multiple times. Today's throwaway culture would shock these mothers who saw value in everything. For black families in the 1980s, reusing and recycling wasn't about being environmentally conscious. It was about survival and making sure every purchase counted. Sewing patches on jeans instead of buying new ones. When kids wore holes in their jeans, black mothers didn't rush to the store for replacements. They pulled out the sewing kit and patched those jeans with whatever fabric they had on hand. Iron-on patches, denim scraps, even colorful pieces that didn't match became badges of a mother's determination to make clothes last. Kids wore patched jeans to school without shame because everyone else's jeans looked the same. This wasn't about fashion. It was about priorities. The money saved on new jeans went toward more important things like groceries or school supplies. Some mothers got creative with their patches, turning worn knees into artistic statements. They taught their daughters how to sew so the skill could be passed down to the next generation. For black mothers in the 1980s, a needle and thread were tools of financial survival, and patched clothing was a sign of resourcefulness, not poverty. Cutting coupons from the Sunday newspaper and organizing them in envelopes. Every Sunday morning, black mothers would sit at the kitchen table with scissors, carefully cutting coupons from the newspaper inserts. They'd organize them by category in envelopes labeled cereal, canned goods, toiletries, and frozen foods. Shopping day meant bringing that stack of envelopes to the store and matching each coupon to the items on sale. This process took time and planning, but it could save $20 or $30 on a single shopping trip. Kids learned patience as their mothers compared prices and checked expiration dates on every coupon. Some mothers belonged to coupon clubs where they'd trade duplicates with friends and neighbors. The savings were real and measurable, turning a $100 grocery bill into $70 or $80. For black mothers in the 1980s, clipping coupons wasn't just about saving money. It was about taking control of the family budget and proving that careful planning could make the difference between struggling and surviving? Making their own cleaning products from vinegar, baking soda, and lemon. Store-bought cleaning products were expensive, so Black mothers learned to make their own from ingredients that cost almost nothing. White vinegar cleaned windows and counters. Baking soda scrubbed sinks and tubs. Lemon juice removed stains and left everything smelling fresh. These homemade cleaners worked just as well as the expensive bottles from the store, and a single box of baking soda could last for months. Kids watched their mothers mix these simple ingredients and learned that you didn't need fancy products to keep a home clean. The money saved on cleaning supplies added up quickly, freeing up cash for more important expenses. Some mothers kept spray bottles filled with their homemade mixtures under the sink, ready to tackle any mess. This knowledge came from grandmothers who lived through the Depression and understood that resourcefulness was survival. For Black mothers in the 1980s, making cleaning products from scratch was practical wisdom that kept homes spotless without breaking the bank. Shopping at thrift stores and yard sales for children's clothes. Black mothers in the 1980s knew that kids outgrew clothes faster than they wore them out, so why pay full price? Thrift stores, yard sales, and church bazaars became treasure hunts where mothers found barely worn jeans, shirts, and shoes for a fraction of retail prices. Saturday mornings meant hitting multiple yard sales, cash in hand, looking for deals. $1 could buy 3 or 4 shirts. $5 could outfit a child completely. Kids wore second-hand clothes to school, and nobody knew the difference because everything was clean, pressed, and well-maintained. Some mothers became expert bargain hunters, knowing which thrift stores got the best donations and which yard sales had the highest quality items. They'd wash and iron everything carefully, making second-hand look brand new. This wasn't about being unable to afford new clothes. It was about being smart with money and refusing to waste resources on things that would be outgrown in 6 months. For Black mothers in the 1980s, thrift shopping was strategic financial management disguised as weekend entertainment. Cooking large pots of beans, rice, and stew that could feed the family for days. Meal planning in Black households during the 1980s meant cooking in bulk. A large pot of pinto beans, red beans, or black-eyed peas cooked on Sunday could provide meals until Wednesday. Rice was bought in 20-pound bags and served with everything. Stews made with inexpensive cuts of meat, potatoes, carrots, and onions stretched across multiple dinners. Leftovers weren't wasted. They were lunch the next day, or dinner with a different side dish. This cooking strategy saved both time and money, reducing the need for expensive convenience foods. Kids got used to eating the same meal 2 or 3 nights in a row, and nobody complained because the food was good and filling. Mothers added different seasonings or sides to keep things interesting, turning Monday's beans and rice into Tuesday's beans with cornbread and greens. These large pots also meant fewer trips to the grocery store, saving gas money and impulse purchases. For Black mothers in the 1980s, bulk cooking was meal prep before meal prep was trendy, and it was rooted in generations of making food stretch as far as possible. Using the oven to heat the house during winter instead of running the heater all day. Heating bills were expensive in the 1980s, and Black mothers found creative ways to stay warm without running the furnace constantly. On cold mornings, they'd turn on the oven and leave the door open, letting the heat warm up the kitchen. Kids would gather around the open oven door to get dressed, and families would spend evenings in the kitchen where it was warmest. This wasn't ideal, and it certainly wouldn't pass modern safety standards, but it was a reality for families trying to keep utility bills manageable. Some mothers would bake bread or cook meals specifically to generate heat, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Extra blankets, layered clothing, and closing off unused rooms were other strategies to conserve energy and save money. The gas or electric bill could make or break a tight monthly budget, so every degree mattered. For black mothers in the 1980s, staying warm meant getting creative and making sacrifices that their children would only understand years later, trading babysitting duties with neighbors instead of paying for childcare. Childcare was expensive, so black mothers created informal networks where they watched each other's kids. "I'll watch your kids on Tuesday if you watch mine on Thursday" became a common arrangement that saved everyone money. These networks were built on trust and reciprocity, with mothers looking out for each other's children as if they were their own. Kids spent afternoons at different houses in the neighborhood, playing with friends while their mothers worked or ran errands. This system required coordination and communication, but it worked because everyone understood they were in it together. No money changed hands, just favors exchanged and relationships strengthened. Some mothers kept calendars tracking whose turn it was to watch the neighborhood kids, making sure the load was shared fairly. For black mothers in the 1980s, babysitting swaps weren't just about saving money. They were about community, mutual support, and the understanding that raising children was a collective responsibility. Freezing bread before it went stale to make it last longer. Bread went stale quickly, especially in humid weather, so black mothers bought extra loaves on sale and froze them immediately. Frozen bread could last for months, and when thawed, it tasted fresh enough for sandwiches or toast. This strategy meant fewer trips to the store and fewer chances of running out of bread during the week. Kids learned to take out a loaf the night before and let it thaw on the counter by morning. Some mothers would buy day-old bread from the bakery discount rack and freeze it right away, getting the best of both savings strategies. Frozen bread also meant families could take advantage of bulk purchases and sales without worrying about waste. A freezer full of bread was like having a backup pantry that could rescue dinner plans when money was tight. For black mothers in the 1980s, freezing bread was a simple trick that demonstrated how small planning decisions could have big impacts on the family budget. Mixing store-brand products into name-brand containers so kids wouldn't complain. Kids in the 1980s had brand loyalty learned from television commercials, and they'd complain if their favorite cereals or snacks suddenly changed. Smart black mothers bought cheaper store-brand versions and poured them into the name-brand boxes and containers. The kids never knew the difference, happily eating their Frosted Flakes that were actually the generic cornflakes from the bottom shelf. This trick worked for everything from cereal to juice to cookies. Mothers would carefully peel off store-brand labels and transfer contents into recognizable packaging. The savings added up quickly, with store brands costing half as much as name brands for essentially the same product. Kids bragged about having their favorite brands, while mothers smiled, knowing they'd saved $5 or $10 that week. This wasn't about deceiving children. It was about avoiding unnecessary arguments and making the budget work. For black mothers in the 1980s, this sleight of hand was another tool in their arsenal of financial survival strategies. Perming their own hair and their daughter's hair at home instead of going to salons. Hair salon visits were expensive luxuries that many black families couldn't afford regularly. Instead, mothers learned to do perms, press and curls, and styles at home. Kitchen beauticians became legendary in black neighborhoods, with mothers doing hair for their daughters, nieces, and neighbors' kids. A box perm cost $5 or $6 compared to $30 or $40 at a salon. Mothers studied techniques, practiced on willing heads, and built their skills over time. Some became so good that other mothers would pay them a small fee to do their children's hair, creating side income. The smell of hair relaxer in the kitchen on Saturday mornings became a familiar scent in black households. Girls learned to sit still for hours while their mothers worked magic with hot combs, curling irons, and chemical relaxers. This DIY approach to hair care saved hundreds of dollars a year and taught daughters valuable skills they'd use throughout their lives. For black mothers in the 1980s, home hair care was both an economic necessity and a bonding ritual that connected generations. Buying generic store-brand medications instead of name brands. When kids got sick, black mothers knew that generic acetaminophen worked just as well as Tylenol, and store-brand cough syrup did the same job as Robitussin. They'd carefully read labels to verify that active ingredients were identical, then buy the cheaper version without hesitation. This knowledge saved significant money because medications could be expensive, especially for families with multiple children. Mothers kept medicine cabinets stocked with generic brands, ready for fevers, colds, and minor injuries. They taught their children to look past packaging and marketing to understand what actually mattered in products. Some pharmacies offered even deeper discounts on their store brands, and savvy mothers knew which stores had the best prices. This practical approach to healthcare meant families could afford to treat illnesses without breaking the budget. For Black mothers in the 1980s, choosing generic medications wasn't about settling for less. It was about being smart consumers who understood that expensive marketing didn't make medicine work better. Turning old clothes into quilts, rags, and cleaning cloths. When clothing was truly beyond repair, Black mothers didn't throw it away. T-shirts became cleaning rags. Old dresses and pants were cut into squares for quilts. Even worn-out towels found new life as shop rags or garden cloths. This complete use of textiles meant nothing went to waste, and fewer purchases were needed. Some mothers were skilled quilters who could turn a pile of old clothes into beautiful blankets that kept families warm for years. Kids learned to see potential in worn-out items rather than viewing them as trash. This mindset extended beyond clothes to all household items, creating a culture of reuse and resourcefulness. The quilts made from old clothes carried memories and stories, with each square representing a moment in the family's history. For Black mothers in the 1980s, transforming old clothes into something useful was both practical economy and creative expression. Growing vegetables in backyard gardens or pots on windowsills. Many Black families in the 1980s grew their own vegetables to supplement grocery store purchases. Tomatoes, greens, peppers, and beans grew in backyard gardens or even in large pots on apartment balconies. Fresh vegetables from the garden meant lower grocery bills and better-tasting meals. Kids learned to water plants, pull weeds, and harvest crops, gaining an understanding of where food came from. Some families canned or froze their harvest, creating a stockpile that lasted through winter. Mothers traded vegetables with neighbors, sharing bumper crops and creating community connections. A successful garden could save $50 or $100 during growing season, money that went toward other necessities. Even a small windowsill herb garden provided fresh seasonings that enhanced meals without additional cost. For Black mothers in the 1980s, growing food wasn't about being trendy or organic. It was about taking control of food costs and teaching children self-sufficiency. Shopping for groceries late in the evening to get markdowns on meat and bread. Black mothers knew that grocery stores marked down perishable items late in the day to sell them before closing. Meat that was approaching its sell-by date got discounted by 30 or 50%. Day-old bread and bakery items went on clearance. Smart mothers timed their shopping trips to catch these deals, filling their carts with discounted items that would be cooked or frozen that night. This strategy required flexibility and planning, but the savings were substantial. A family could eat steak or roast chicken by buying marked-down meat that was still perfectly good, but needed to be cooked soon. Kids learned to appreciate that reduced for quick sale. Stickers meant dinner would be special that night. Some mothers became friends with butchers and produce managers who'd save the best markdowns for regular customers. For Black mothers in the 1980s, strategic shopping times turned budgets into buying power, proving that when you shopped mattered as much as what you bought. Making their own bread instead of buying it from the store. Homemade bread cost pennies compared to store-bought loaves, and it tasted better too. Black mothers with time and skill baked bread weekly, filling their homes with the smell of fresh yeast and warm dough. A 5-pound bag of flour could make dozens of loaves, and the ingredients were simple: flour, yeast, salt, sugar, and water. Kids came home from school to fresh bread with butter melting into every slice. This wasn't just about saving money. It was about providing quality food and teaching children valuable skills. Some mothers baked extra loaves to share with neighbors or to sell for a small profit. The time investment was significant, but the financial and emotional returns made it worthwhile. Homemade bread became a source of pride and a way to show love through food. For Black mothers in the 1980s, baking bread was domestic economy at its finest, turning basic ingredients into nourishment and comfort. Using powdered milk mixed with regular milk to make both last longer. Fresh milk was expensive and had a short shelf life, so Black mothers stretched it by mixing it with reconstituted powdered milk. Half fresh, half powdered created a blend that tasted close enough to the real thing, while making both products last twice as long. Kids could usually tell something was different, but they drank it anyway because complaining didn't change anything. This mixture worked well for cereal, cooking, and baking, where the taste difference was less noticeable. Mothers experimented with ratios until they found the perfect balance that maximized savings without making the milk undrinkable. Some added a little vanilla or sugar to improve the flavor. The savings were significant, turning a weekly milk purchase into a bi-weekly one. For Black mothers in the 1980s, this compromise between quality and cost was just another example of making tough choices to keep the family fed and the budget balanced, cutting their own hair and their children's hair instead of paying for barbers. Barbershop visits added up quickly for families with multiple children, so many Black mothers learned to cut hair at home. They invested in a good pair of clippers and practiced techniques until they could give decent haircuts. Boys lined up in the kitchen for their turns, sitting on a stool covered with a towel while their mother buzzed and shaped their hair. Some mothers became surprisingly skilled, giving fades and tapers that looked almost professional. Kids might complain about homemade haircuts not being quite right, but they learned to appreciate the savings. Daughter's hair was trimmed and shaped at home too, with mothers carefully evening out lengths and removing split ends. The money saved on haircuts could be $50 or $60 a month for a large family. For Black mothers in the 1980s, learning to cut hair was another skill in their toolkit of financial survival, proving that with practice and determination, almost any service could be done at home. Joining food co-ops and buying clubs to get bulk discounts. Some Black mothers organized or joined food cooperatives where families pooled money to buy groceries in bulk at wholesale prices. These groups bought large quantities of rice, beans, flour, canned goods, and other staples, then divided them among members. The savings were substantial, sometimes 30 or 40% off retail prices. This required organization and trust, but the financial benefits made it worthwhile. Mothers took turns picking up orders and managing inventory. Kids helped divide bulk purchases into family portions, learning about cooperation and community economics. These buying clubs also created social connections and support networks that extended beyond just saving money. Members shared recipes, childcare tips, and moral support during tough times. For Black mothers in the 1980s, food co-ops represented collective action and mutual aid, showing that when families worked together, everyone's dollar stretched further. Making their own laundry detergent from soap bars, borax, and washing soda. Laundry detergent was another household expense that could be dramatically reduced by making it at home. Black mothers grated bars of soap, mixed them with borax and washing soda, and created detergent that cost a fraction of store-bought brands. A single batch could last for months and cleaned clothes just as effectively. This homemade detergent worked especially well for hand washing, which many families still did for delicate items or small loads. The ingredients were simple and inexpensive, available at any grocery store. Kids watched their mothers mix these concoctions and learned that with a little effort and knowledge, household products could be made for pennies. Some mothers shared their recipes with neighbors, spreading the money-saving wisdom throughout the community. For Black mothers in the 1980s, making laundry detergent was part of a broader philosophy that refused to pay premium prices for things they could create themselves, collecting and returning bottles and cans for deposit money. In states with bottle deposit laws, Black mothers made sure every can and bottle was saved and returned for the refund. Kids were sent to the store with bags of returnables, coming home with a few dollars that went toward groceries or school supplies. This wasn't just about the money. It taught children that small amounts added up and that nothing should be wasted. Some families collected bottles and cans from neighbors, too, turning recycling into a small income source. On Saturday mornings, kids walked through the neighborhood with wagons, asking if anyone had returnables to donate. The deposit money might only be $10 or $15 a month, but that could buy a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. For Black mothers in the 1980s, bottle returns represented found money and resourcefulness, proving that every penny counted and every opportunity mattered. Hosting potluck dinners instead of expensive family gatherings. When Black families wanted to celebrate or gather, mothers organized potluck dinners where everyone brought a dish. This shared approach meant no single family bore the full cost of feeding everyone. Potlucks became celebrations of community cooking, with tables full of diverse dishes showcasing different family recipes. Kids loved these gatherings because they got to taste foods from different households and play with cousins and friends. The host provided the space and maybe the main dish or drinks, while guests contributed sides, desserts, and their presents. This tradition built community bonds and ensured that families could celebrate together regardless of individual financial situations. Some potlucks became legendary in neighborhoods, with families looking forward to them for weeks. For Black mothers in the 1980s, potluck dinners proved that joy and togetherness didn't require expensive catering or restaurant bills. They showed that when everyone contributed, nobody carried the burden alone. Mending torn clothes immediately instead of letting damage get worse. A small tear could become a huge hole if ignored, so Black mothers kept their sewing kits close and mended clothes as soon as damage appeared. A few stitches tonight meant the garment could be worn for months longer. Kids learned to bring torn clothes to their mothers immediately, rather than hiding them or hoping they wouldn't be noticed. This proactive approach to maintenance extended the life of every piece of clothing in the household. Mothers taught their daughters to sew so they could handle their own repairs. Some became so skilled that their mending was nearly invisible. This attention to maintenance wasn't just about clothes. It applied to everything in the household, from furniture to appliances. The philosophy was simple: take care of what you have because replacing it costs money you don't have. For Black mothers in the 1980s, a needle and thread were tools of preservation and financial wisdom, using every part of the chicken, including backs, necks, and feet, for stock and soup. When Black mothers bought chicken, nothing went to waste. Backs and necks made rich stock for soups and gravy. Feet were cleaned and cooked until tender, providing collagen-rich broth. Wings became snacks. Breasts and thighs were main dishes. Even the bones were simmered for stock before being discarded. This complete utilization of ingredients stretched food budgets and reduced waste. Kids learned to appreciate every part of the animal and understood that waste was disrespectful to the sacrifice and the expense. Some mothers would buy whole chickens and break them down themselves, getting more value than buying pre-cut pieces. The stock made from scraps became the base for multiple meals, adding flavor and nutrition without additional cost. For Black mothers in the 1980s, using every part of the chicken wasn't unusual. It was common sense and good economics, rooted in traditions that valued resourcefulness and rejected wastefulness. These 25 strategies weren't individual choices. They were a coordinated lifestyle of financial survival and smart management that kept Black families fed, clothed, and housed during tough economic times. Today's generation might look at these practices and see hardship, but for those who lived them, they represented strength, creativity, and an unshakable determination to provide for their families, no matter what obstacles stood in the way. Which of these money-saving tricks did your mother use? Drop a comment and share your memories of the resourcefulness that kept families together.